as a woman on YouTube, comments are an interesting place when we're talking about mental health.
What has the impact of the existence of shorts been on your mental health?
Creating art for art's sake.
Sure.
And capitalism.
You sat in the wrong seat.
Like, how do you deal with concerns around like privacy and boundaries?
I think we've reached a point on the internet of saturation where it's no longer given that something is trolling.
You should all have confidence in yourselves that it's like, okay, well, I got me here. And I feel like we're all sort of scared about losing this because it's also important to us.
No matter what I put on the internet, a real person is going to read it and have a feeling about it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the #1 hobby YouTube podcast in the world. My name's Ben Byrne, and with me, as always, today is...
Trent from Miscast.
Hi, I'm Luna from Luboffen. That's me.
I'm Dave from Tabletop Time.
Delivering it as an old man.
Yeah. I was meant to be awkward and nervous. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was good because it's on theme.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of mental health.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
great.
setting you up.
Yeah, I see. I'm Dael Kingsmill. I'm on Monarch Factory and also the Eldritch Lorecast. I am actually there almost every week. So.
Almost every week. The sort of content that I typically do and that Dael and I do on the Lorecast is very tabletop RPG themed, so it's very hobby space themed, particularly around 5e, but we like to talk about other systems and other games and other companies as well. Trent, what's your channel focused on?
I do mostly miniatures, some tabletop like RPG stuff. It's basically what anyone will let me do, which I guess is the theme of this, which is if people aren't watching it, I'm not making it. But if you do watch it, I'll make whatever you want.
You heard whatever you want.
My channel is mostly Critical Role fan content, so recaps, lore breakdowns, screaming at my screen when fun things happen, pretty much.
And Tabletop Time is mostly miniature painting, a lot of it in the wargaming space. We do board builds, table builds, but we also dabble in RPG stuff. And then also a second channel, which is all like roleplay, live plays. Yeah.
And Monarch Factory has been many things at many times, and it never quite leaves any of them behind. All of them geeky. I started out making mythology videos where I would retell stories from various mythologies, mostly Greek, with little funny cartoons, and then it became D&D for a long time.
Sure,
but
yeah.
Lots of other bits and pieces thrown in the mix there. I referenced earlier, I at some point made a how to make ice cream video, so you get it. It's a lot of stuff.
We're all YouTubers in the hobby space, right? All of our channels, in some capacity, I imagine, started as hobby, whether it's tabletop, whether it's D&D, whether it's watching live plays, or just being like a fan of something. And so making that leap from something being a hobby, something you do for yourself in your own time and with friends, to I guess the first step, right, is putting it out there, is making a channel before it's necessarily being like a professional YouTuber or whatever. Trent, what was that leap like for you?
I basically started my channel because I saw a void that needed to be filled. What I was watching on YouTube wasn't what I wanted to watch as someone in the hobby. So it started very sort of wholesomely. And then during COVID, I lost my regular job, another creative job that I'd worked years and years and years and years to build, basically. And then the only sort of other thing I had going for me was a little YouTube channel. And now that's what I do full time. It's ebbed and flows, the success of it. But I've stayed alive, which is good.
That is good. Because that's interesting. We've legitimately never talked about this before in terms of the origins, but you were forced. I know a lot of YouTubers kind of cling to their day job because it's their steady source of income. Then they might move to part-time if they feel confident to. And then it's a massive leap for people to go from having sort of stable employment elsewhere to trying to do YouTube first full-time. Do you feel like that was more kind of an opportunity that was thrust upon you?
Yeah, I mean, I was working basically out of high school. I started doing freelance graphic design, and then I started doing really well.
Sure.
And then, then we lost everything, all our contracts, all our clients and stuff. And then YouTube was what I had. So I was also working a manual labor job to sustain that YouTube channel until I could, just live off ad revenue and sponsors or whatever.
What was the leap from being like part-time employed to just being
It's just
like
necessity.
all my-
It's like just trying to survive.
Sure.
Like 100%. It's like this all started as like just wanting to share my creative ability. And then it's like, oh, I also have something I care deeply about, which is like, I want to sustain my hobby. Like I want to be a positive contribution to a space that isn't what I'm seeing at the moment,
Sure.
but also I need to make money. So it's like that trying to find that balance has been the only difficulty, basically.
Sure.
But it's the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. To be able to sustain it, full time. Luna, what about yourself?
Well, I am one of those ones clinging to my day job.
Sorry, I knew as soon as it came out of my mouth, I did not mean that to sound like prejudicial.
I didn't take it as any offense.
Sure,
I think
sure.
it's actually probably the reality for a vast majority of content creators, I would imagine, because it does take a really long time to get to that point where you can take that leap. And I just don't feel like I've gotten there. I did attempt it. I think Ginny D has talked about how you really have to work 2 full-time jobs for at least a year if you really want to make it. And I tried that and I got very burnt out and I had to take a year off pretty much. So I'm now just kind of decided it's just going to be like I have my income is basically 50-50 between content creation and then my very boring, stable day job, which is kind of nice to have something to just not have to worry about too much. Yeah. So that's kind of my story with that stuff.
Yeah, sure. Dave, what about you?
Look, it was a journey. It's a leap. I'm in the less common situation where I was hired into YouTube. Basically, so the channel is owned by Jazza, who is a very prolific YouTuber. And we were playing D&D, and then he's like, I'm bringing back my D&D channel, or Cogent Roleplay is what we play. But, do you want to be involved? We had fun. I kind of need some new people. I haven't done this for 5 years. Let's play some games. And, it's going to be like a quiet thing in my garage, and it's going to be nothing, and there's no expectations, and nothing's going to come out of it.
Sure.
So it was definitely, the beginning was like, okay, well, let's do it. Like, let's say yes to every opportunity. Because I think that's really important in life. Like, you don't get many special opportunities even just to play. I didn't even know who he was, by the way. Like, I had no idea until he told me. But yeah, it was interesting because that first year was sort of like working, basically not working, like volunteering on a podcast sort of situation that isn't making any money, to then like, oh, I'm doing a video and I'm a YouTuber. Like, could you help me out with something? It's like a day's paid work. And then saying yes. And then like this super inconsistent, unreliable, like shaky start where you're just saying yes to everything. You're giving 200% more than you're like necessarily getting paid for or whatever. Like, that's irrelevant at the time. At least it was for me. But then as it grew, it actually became harder. Like, it was easy at the start when it was like, do what you can. And then that middle ground where I was like, okay, so I'm trying to keep a business open. I have a hobby store in a rural town, which is not an easy business. So I was like, okay, I'm working a full-time job. I'm trying to keep a business open. And now I'm also doing this. So it was like a year of ridiculousness. I was working like 14-hour days every day of the week, pretty much just trying to do things. Like, it'd be like Sunday, great. I got tax and paperwork and filing. And it was really, really hard. But at the same time, like, you're entering into a extremely invigorating and exciting space that I hadn't been in before.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was weird. It was hard. And then eventually one day it was like, do you want a job? Because this is now built into something and we can pay you. So this is what we can offer. And then it became a job like everyone else's jobs.
Talking to you over the last like 12 months, because we met last year, has been interesting because you're one of the few people who are in a similar position to me where we're not independents running our own business and necessarily we're employed full time, which I think comes with very different stresses compared to YouTubers that are independent. Dael, because you've done a little bit of mixed, right? Like, you've been hired by content creation channels.
Yeah, I've never had someone paying me super consistently. So I do have an unusual beginning as well, in that I wanted to make videos But I wanted to be making like web series, like they were really big at the time. And I was like, oh, my friends at other universities are making web series and they're crap, but at least they're doing stuff. Because I come from a theater background, right? And I was studying theater at university and I'm watching other people make stuff. And I was so frustrated that no one around me wanted to make use of this platform that was here for the taking. And I had been watching YouTube the whole way through the sort of first wave of big YouTubers and was really inspired by it. And then it just happened to coincide that a channel called Geek and Sundry were launching a second channel where they wanted vloggers from around the world. And so they put out a call for audition videos. And so I sort of was independently creating videos. I auditioned for this channel and I got on. And I was being paid, but not very much. But it does make the difference having that very stable, even if small, beginning, because it meant that I was studying at university full time in New South Wales. Certainly, I'm not sure if it's nationwide, but youth allowance was a thing, so I was getting youth allowance, and then also this little bit of money that I was getting from Geek and Sundry was able to go towards. I could afford to buy a good camera and know that I would eventually get that money back. It wasn't a gamble, that sort of thing. But then a few years later, Geek and Sundry has dropped the vlogs channel. So I am fully independent now. And now I'm leaving university, I'm graduating. And so it was the same thing kind of happening in reverse where I had a fairly steady beginning and then had to make a choice whether I was going to continue doing this thing after I'd built up an audience of, at that point, probably like maybe 10,000 subscribers and whether it was worth the risk involved in that. But yeah.
Well, I have a list of things that I find really stressful that I think are commonalities that we've all talked about before, but I don't want to ask a bunch of closed questions, especially not straight up. So Trent, because you're closest to me, starting back down this end, you sat in the wrong seat. What do you think, what's one of the most stressful parts you think that is consistently stressful in the content creation that you're doing?
I would say just the finances. It's like, when I find the financial side is very inconsistent. It's I can't work out why my ad revenue pays well on some videos and not why my AdSense is much higher on some videos.
Sure.
I don't want to deal with, negotiating with sponsors. Sometimes it's really easy and then sometimes it's hugely difficult. And then, videos tank as well,
When you're talking about how much revenue you're going to make on a video, because I don't necessarily know this, I just assume the more views a video gets, the more the ad revenue it's going to make. Is that not necessarily the case?
I mean, there's no correlation. And it has to do with how invested people, from my understanding, how invested people are. And I think for everyone, it's kind of like throwing bones. Nobody really understands how it works.
Yeah.
But it's if people are watching longer, they're probably getting fed more ads. But it's also some videos are just more interesting topics for people to want to put their,
Yeah, they pay a higher CPM on some topics, and you don't know if your video is going to hit that topic necessarily.
Yeah. So for folks in the crowd, CPM is clicks per mil. It's basically a measure of how much money you can expect on average per 1,000 clicks on the video, right? And it varies depending on subject matter of the video, what your demographic of your built-up audience is. Lots of different little things sort of feed into it, and every video is going to have its own CPM, and every channel is going to have its own average CPM, and so it's kind of really nebulous and difficult to navigate. So more views generally is more money for ad revenue, but it's more complicated than that. Yeah.
That must be why sometimes ours is lower, because our channel is all how to terrify your players and how to be the most violent D&D you've ever played.
Blood and guts. And,
exactly.
But during Halloween, that's when they pay a lot.
Peak.
That's
what I'm crossing my fingers
Christmas, downhill.
Luna, what about you? What do you find stressful in the role?
I think the most stressful thing for me is just the constant churn of making content, especially for my channel, because I do make videos for every episode of Critical Role, which is weekly. They do take 1 week off, so thankfully. I was so happy when they instituted that. But in order for my content to stay relevant, I have to be making it every single week. And, I do have a day job. I also have an 8-year-old. So it's sometimes some weeks, my kid gets sick and then I'm cramming trying to finish a video in 8 hours. And I find that really stressful. There's no chance for me to get ahead I've built my own bed that I now lie in with my content, but I can't pre-film a video for an episode that hasn't released yet. So that's probably my most stressful thing.
Do you feel like you're not necessarily a master of your own destiny in terms of like all of us feel like we need to like constantly put out a video because the algorithm likes consistency and likes more content rather than less? I believe. Sometimes I say these things and the four of you all go, no. And I'm like, oh, okay, I've got it wrong. But I don't think any of our channels are necessary, apart from yours, are necessarily tied to another channel's schedule quite so tightly.
Yes, it does give me a lot of anxiety that a lot of my income is based on someone else's IP. I don't know if I would recommend that as a way to start a YouTube channel. I kind of fell into doing it. I was actually doing D&D, like how to play videos and stuff. And then I just happened to make a Critical Role video when the new season campaign started, and it really, like, compared to my channel at the time, which was quite small, it like exploded. And I was like, this is fun. I love Critical Role. Let's talk more about Critical Role. And I just kind of, fell down that pipeline a little bit. But yeah, that is a little bit anxiety inducing. And it's very hard for me to experiment because obviously Critical Role is a very niche topic. So it's hard for me to move out of that niche.
Well, that's exactly it. You've got the best example of it, but I'm curious to hear everybody else's experiences in terms of getting trapped in your niche, because the behaviors on YouTube, and anecdotally when I reflect on my own behaviors, I'm like, yeah, I do kind of do that, is that you go to a channel, you know what sort of content they're going to serve you, and you go to that channel for that sort of content. And then as soon as that channel does something that's very different because the creator wants to experiment or wants to try something new, typically those videos don't perform as well because people aren't going to your channel looking for that content. Dave, do you find it difficult to kind of experiment outside like a certain niche? Do you feel like your niche is very specific, or you've still got a lot of playground within it?
Yeah, we're pretty niched up. In the Warhammer zone, in the miniature zone, we'd say like Space Marine videos are basically make bank. But it's interesting because the problem is if you get too tied down into your niche, it gets actually harder and harder to be experimental. And there are so many advantages and like pros and cons to both, because you're basically batting for subscribers or non-subscribers. But I think a huge stress in this area right now is, and I mean, people have talked about it for as long as people have been watching YouTube, but the algorithm, whatever. It's not about the fact that there's this nebulous thing that you don't understand necessarily. It's that it's constantly evolving and changing. So as soon as you've learned the pattern shifts, the way it works shifts. So you always have this stress of feeling like you're like 3 months behind whatever is now changing. So you finally figured it out. You enact something that should work and then it doesn't, but it would have worked a month ago, and like you can see it would have worked. It's not just, or maybe you can't, maybe you were going crazy. It's hard to tell. But yeah, genuinely, like you always feel like you're chasing this weird thing. And right now in particular, I think is probably like the worst time I've ever seen it for being forced into a niche.
Sure.
I think that the YouTube algorithm right now, and probably everyone out here has maybe noticed this, that if you don't watch like 2 videos of a channel, 2 specifically, in a row, they're gone. You won't see them on your recommended. You won't get notifications. You won't see them on your subscriber feed. I watch YouTube, and we on our TV will just like not watch 2 videos of someone's, and then they're just gone. And then you like a month later are like, wait, have they uploaded? Yeah, there's 6.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to get a little nerdy in terms of like digital content theory for a second, but I promise it will attach to mental health in a minute. But so there's a concept that is pretty provably real when you're starting out on YouTube, and take this advice, but meter it a little bit. When you niche down, so like for an example, Dungeons and Dragons is a niche topic that you can talk about on YouTube. Only people who care about Dungeons and Dragons are going to look for that thing. And then you can niche down further. I make content for dungeon masters. That's one category of D&D people. And then you can say, I do homebrew stuff. I deal with the mechanics of it. That's a separate thing. You're niching down. And the more you niche down, there's a thing called the long tail effect, which is basically, even though something is very specific and there might not be that many people who look for that thing, everyone who looks for that small, interesting thing is going to be able to find it because there's not that many people making content for it. So the more you niche down, the sort of quicker you can rise within that niche, but the sooner you're going to plateau, right? And so it's something, and then now we have the algorithm really backing that. They go, wow, you did so well. Everyone who cares about that thing found it instantly. We're going to push your videos to people who love that thing. But at that point, it becomes very specifically tied to that thing. And so if you want to make more varied content, I know Luna and I have both experienced, trying to shift content a little bit. And even though I started outside of D&D, it's really hard to kind of break off from that river of what the algorithm and what the niching down wants you to do and what your audience wants you to do. So that's where you have to balance a little bit. If you want to have success, a really good way to start is by niching down, but you really have to balance thinking about the long term of what you're going to want to make and how that's going to impact you and the way you think. Because the other thing that I've been talking about all night, we went to dinner before this, is, numbers are how you interact with the system. YouTube is communicating to you through numbers. And so the numbers can kind of become everything. And that's something that you kind of have to push against if you want to look out for your own brain.
How long, and you might not all have like a to the minute or even hourly estimate for me, but I'm just kind of curious. How long do you think you spend looking at your analytics and so I
don't
with
think
Luna.
about it.
I just did it.
Dave was looking at his analytics.
Here's an extra, I have my YouTube on my phone, right? As in there's a separate YouTube app called YouTube Studio or something that you can see the back, the back annals of your channel or whatever. And I have it on my phone because it feels necessary for work, right? It means I can upload shorts. It means I can do other things that I can't necessarily do or don't want to do from a laptop. But it means that on the weekend, when I'm in theory not at work, I have access to my analytics. And when I'm bored, going to my YouTube Studio is literally in my social media rotation of let me check Instagram, see if there's anything new, anything there. Let me go to Twitter, see if anybody's posted anything new. Let me go to my YouTube Studio app, see if there's any comments, see how this video is performing.
I just think that it's wild that you still think of yourself as having a weekend. I can't conceptualize that for myself.
I don't think that you can be a full-time content creator and actually have the concept that you can detach like that.
Sure.
I have never talked to a content creator who can, in a healthy way, or at least they feel that they can in a healthy way, take a break, detach from things. It's just alien to almost everyone, even though on paper we should be able to. 'Cause I'm in the same boat as you. I have a weekend, in theory. I am on this thing constantly. I'm responding to comments. I'm in Discord. I'm chatting to people. It's all oriented around that, which is on paper my job, like a work job. But it doesn't feel like that.
Trent, do you feel like you get a weekend?
I feel like my whole life is a weekend, unfortunately. But the way I approach analytics now is I kind of don't look at them, and I use comments as my new analytics.
Okay.
So if people are happy and engaging, then I assume that that's good for the culture in some degree. Obviously everyone wants to see the flashy fireworks when a video does really well, which is it sounds like a joke, but it's real.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But
Wouldn't it be funny then if I was like, wait, what do you mean? You guys
Never had a 1 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also feel like community presence can raise up videos now. I've had some a lot of my recent videos have sat at 10 out of 10, which sounds like a good thing. That's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But after people share and engage with them and share them to their favorite websites and their Discord servers and Facebook pages or whatever, those numbers start going up. But then YouTube's maybe we should put it places that it should be on YouTube as opposed to hiding it from people that might want to see it. So I feel you can sort of, if you're making things that are engageable, you can sort of maybe I'm also making stuff up as well. I don't know. Nobody knows. But
That's so interesting that you say that, because I have actually do the opposite, where I am not really looking at comments. I have a very specific, this is my comment looking at and answering time, because I find looking at the comments actually being perceived, like knowing that people are perceiving me all the time, very stressful. So actually that's why I use YouTube Studio, because on the YouTube Studio desktop, it shows you the latest comments. Like there's no way to not see that. But on YouTube Studio, it's just the analytics and you have to scroll down to get the comments. So that's like my little, if you don't want to see the comments, but you want to check how your video is doing.
I also do wonder how much gender expression plays into where someone values comments in their ranking of, because I don't know, certainly for me as a woman on YouTube, comments are an interesting place when we're talking about mental health, and this is a sort of workspace. I've been really lucky enough that my core audience that I've sort of developed over time and who have developed themselves over time are really supportive and great. But there have also been times where you can't avoid really toxic behavior in the comments. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, on that one, I think that for me feeds into part of why I do it, because I'm on a channel with other people. One of those people is my fiance. The other person is like one of my closest friends. So I actually feel like effectively I need to be the moderator. I never want those people I care the most about to see things that are horrible. Like I'll take that hit any day of the week and I will delete that as soon as I see it. And if I'm always on my phone and they never chance seeing it, I'm happy.
Well, this is an interesting thing about the
It's uncommon.
Lorecast.
People are mostly lovely. It's really worth saying. People are mostly great.
But you know what is messed up? This is true. In YouTube Studio in particular, the app, but I think it also does it on the desktop. You see when you're looking at a video, if you go down to the comments, you can see the videos that the channel has liked because it gives the little love heart and the logo of the channel or whatever. But when you hit those, if you say like, that's a really nice comment, love heart, whatever, whatever you want to call it, YouTube disappears it because it's like, you've interacted with this one. We'll only show you the ones you haven't interacted with.
Up
and what
the
that
top, you
leaves
can go
with,
and hit the I haven't responded. And
yes,
there's an
but
X
it's
defaulted for
that's an extra step. And if you forget about that, as I often do, what you're left with, it's not even like negative comments, right? Because you can delete those, but even just the comments that are a bit like, I don't know, unkind.
They just give you a bad feeling, Like they're not necessarily deletable or whatever, but it's just like, Yeah.
But what you were saying, Dave, that's interesting because on the Ghostfire Gaming main channel, I'm the only one who's on camera. So any comments that get too personal are only aimed at me. But on the Lorecast, and maybe this is a bad time to bring this up, Dael, but I've never had a conversation with like you or James or Sean about what comments you would like
Well, I don't
deleted.
know if you've noticed this because I feel this is just and I'm an old hat at YouTube habit.
Sure.
But I won't pick fights in my own comment section. I pick fights in the Eldritch Lorecast comment section. If they're mean to my friends, I don't care what they say about me, but if they say something nasty about Sean or Joey or you, I'm like,
Yes.
And we appreciate the engagement. What about the kind of what I call the carousel, right? Which is the need to constantly come up with not just an idea. It's not enough to come up with a video to put out because it feels like every video needs to be the next best video you've ever made because anything that doesn't perform as well as the previous one or anything that's going to be a 10 out of 10, again, not a good thing, it's at the bottom of the ranking, feels like a backslide, feels like a missed opportunity, feels like a missed step. How do you go with being able to come up with new ideas constantly that have that pressure to perform?
I don't feel like I can respond because my content is very responsive. So
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm interested to hear what you'll say.
I just make more stuff. Like it sounds silly, but it's like it takes so much pressure off knowing that I can just make something else in a couple more days that, it doesn't hold so much weight if it underperforms. And also like you have to have sort of confidence in what you've made that eventually it might find its right audience. So it might take a little bit, but I find that usually it gets somewhere. And also you might just be making something that's kind of niche, but also important. Like all these things have value, but maybe not to as many people as you actually think they do. Like
Sure.
I think we sort of hold ourselves to a very high expectation of how many views we should be getting because we've seen huge numbers before. But also like some people don't want very niche topics, but like the people that want them, they're like, this is the best thing ever. And like when I go to conventions and stuff and people tell me their favorite videos or favorite projects and stuff, it's never the most popular stuff, like ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because all of these points kind of dance around the same core, like fundamental struggle, which is like art, creating art for art's sake,
Sure.
and capitalism. Like it really, like even in what we're talking about with YouTube Studio, ranking things out of a 10 out of 10. And for those who have never seen it, we are not joking about fireworks. When you get a 1 out of 10, that means out of your last 10 performing videos, this is ranked 1. It's the best. They literally explode fireworks on your dashboard every time you open it up.
And it's a
It
thrill.
It is a dopamine.
It's a thrill.
And because they are gamifying content creators to produce things that make them money. Like it's fine. It's our job. So even in coming up with ideas, like it comes back to that same like art for art's sake, making what passionately fuels you versus, you know, what allows you to buy the premium dog food for your evening meal, you know.
Yeah, getting
AdSense is
lighter
bad,
instead of-
guys.
Yeah, well, no, that's another, I mean, it's not my answer to the question, but that is another interesting thing is that, you know, we can talk about success on YouTube and ad revenue income, but most YouTubers I know are making most of their money from some other thing. You know, they are on Patreon, they're streaming and they have subscriptions. They have, you know, I don't know, YouTube memberships, I guess, maybe. But, you know, they're having to sort of externalize that as well. And it becomes another thing that you have to manage. And that was my thing that stresses me out the most, that gives me the most anxiety is managing myself. Because, you know, I've had this long time on YouTube with until very recently undiagnosed ADHD, and it's something I was really bad at, and I'm still not good at. You know, managing emails and people pitching sponsorships and organizing the videos and the schedule for that carousel, and all of that is just kind of nightmarish for me. But you know, when I think about it as well, when I started on YouTube, I was killing that carousel. I was doing 3 videos a fortnight before that kind of, you know, scheduling was even worthwhile. Like YouTube's algorithm did not reward that behavior at the time. And I was so good at it. And over time, I just lost it.
Well,
whatever that was.
There's never
Mania.
been more competition, right? Like there are so many amazing creators doing amazing things. Like, so it's crazy. You see a channel that's got like 200 views and you're just like, whoa, like that's as good as anything we're doing. So I think that like maybe feeds into an idea paralysis too, because like there's a constant sense of I don't want to steal someone's idea. And once you've seen it, it's like, oh, I can't do that. That's taboo now. But like there's 10 times more things to see. So it makes it was easier coming up with ideas 3 years ago than it is now. Like,
Yeah.
We sit in meetings like this. That's usually how it happens. What if I did this? That sounds cool. Yes.
And I wonder as well sometimes whether that niching down again can contribute to that sort of thing where it's like I feel like I have talked about every possible thing that I could talk about. So you just kind of that well runs dry a little bit. And in D&D certainly there's a bizarre thing where you're trying to feed that carousel of content. You're trying to make lots of stuff all the time. So you're focused on work. And then in the meanwhile, you don't realize that you're not doing the thing that inspired you to make the videos in the first place. I wasn't playing D&D that much. And lo and behold, when I went and I played D&D again, I had a sudden burst of more videos because I was inspired again. But you can get so lost in that sort of work aspect that you do lose that sort of passion of art for art's sake that you have monetized.
Yeah, I think YouTube and social media in general, I'm sure people who make TikTok content specifically or Instagram content would probably have a similar experience, which is like the algorithm doesn't care about your annual leave. The algorithm doesn't care about you taking time off. The algorithm doesn't care about the other things outside of YouTube you might need to do for your job. It's just demanding more and more content constantly. And so, you know, burnout becomes a real thing. It's the backslide of a lot of channels that might be doing really well. And then the YouTube just quits like very suddenly because they've burned out. Is that something, Trent, you've experienced?
Yeah, I guess so. yeah, you know, like I put so much weight into a lot of my favorite videos that if they underperform, you know, like that feeling of like, oh, suddenly I don't want to do this thing anymore kicks in. It's hard doing what you want to do and it not do well. 100%.
Does anybody else, because the time I feel the most anxious, which you've tapped into a little bit there, when I'm literally, it's gotten to the point some weeks where it's been feeling almost panic, is the hours before a video goes live and you're trying to put together a thumbnail and you feel like you know this thumbnail is going to make or break this video, and there is pressure to ensure it is the best it could be to give this video the best chance of performing, because if this video doesn't perform, or the last one didn't do super well either, so that's like, am I just on a backslide now? Or the last one did really well, but I need to grow. Like, does anybody else experience that, those moments in the dark?
I mean, I just hate making thumbnails. It's probably my least favorite part about what I do. Just because you're right. It doesn't, you know, your video could be the most amazing video in the world, but if you don't sell it in that tiny little frame, you know, no one's really going to see it. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of pressure.
Yeah. I don't think I have that moment before the video goes live. I totally get what you're talking about. But because I sit and sort of, it's because of that lack of being able to organize myself, I sit in blissful ignorance ahead of the video going live. And I only discover I've always done something wrong. I've always forgotten something. I've always, like, I'll forget to schedule a tweet to notify people that the video is live, or I'll forget to put it on Patreon, or I'll forget any number of things. I will have forgotten something and I don't know until the morning after. And because I have a largely US audience, I release on a US schedule. So I'm releasing my videos at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And so it's been live for hours and hours and hours when I discover what I've done wrong. And then the dread hits.
Although sometimes that's good, because then you don't have, as you were saying, you had a video go live literally before we started.
Yeah.
And that feeling of like checking constantly. Whereas if you, because I do the same, my videos go out at 4 a.m. And so it's great. I wake up at 8 and then I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually doing quite well, because it's had a few hours to like percolate that I haven't been checking it.
That's true with like the Lorecast in our videos as well. The Lorecast is scheduled for, it was midnight here in Australia, but then it's 10 a.m. Wednesday, I think, is when it goes live, Eastern time in the US. And so it's recently shifted because of daylight savings, so that it's now scheduled for 1 a.m. our time. And when it changes again, when the US changes daylight savings, it'll be 2 a.m., which is a godsend, because then I'm not like, if I just am like in bed, it's past midnight, and I go to YouTube and the Lorecast pops up as recommended to my account, which is not the Ghostfire account. I have my own personal YouTube account. I'm like, oh, I've got to click on it. And I've got to let it play for at least 20 minutes. Otherwise, I'm actively damaging this thing's performance. Dave, how many times have you checked on your recent video's performance while we've been doing this panel?
I've been constantly swiping up on it and watching it. I think that's it's a pointless exercise, but it's almost like just something that I do.
Sure.
I feel a lot of pressure. But we're in an interesting situation. I'm incredibly privileged to be an employee, and Jazza being our boss is like basically an old patron of the arts, is how it kind of feels, in the sense that like he's been supporting us. He created the channel. He's been allowing us to make stuff. And like in my years of doing it, I mean, we talk about that anxiety of putting out a video. I don't think he's ever said a single negative word about any of our work ever. Like, it has always been, so we get that we're in this privileged position where we get to put out a video, and even if it does poorly, he'll find something good about it and be like, look, I really loved this thing that you did in there. If you want to talk about ways that we could brainstorm to do something differently next time to improve it, like, do it. So in a way, it's like the big safety net of a little bit of support in that, like, I'm still doing good work. And I think for YouTubers in a vacuum who don't have that, it's just like shouting into the void. So yeah, privileged in that regard, but definitely the hours before, like the scramble to get something out, I'm shattered on our latest video because just as I went to do reveals, we make models, I dropped it and broke a piece off it and didn't pick it up. So there's a whole part in the video where I'm like, I customized this bit and glued it on, and then it's just not there. So the turnarounds are just broken off. There's like a broken bit of plastic. We had to take a thumbnail in the hotel room this afternoon, and it's broken. So that's what something always goes wrong. Roll with it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think that Trent, do you have a personal support network that's not your comment section that sees your videos?
My wonderful girlfriend is like my everything checker. My new ethos is essentially like, I'm only doing one thumbnail or one title. Nothing's ever going to change. So I run it through my girlfriend first. I'm like, is this okay? Do I look like an idiot? Is this fine? And if she says yes, then I just send it.
Okay.
That's all you need.
You have the most healthy mentality. What is this? This is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we have some?
I feel like, and I don't want to be
Please.
throwing anyone under the bus here, but I feel like when I share thumbnails with colleagues to be like, what do you think? That's more stress inducing, because if they don't, if they're like, that's not really, I don't think that's the thing. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh no. Now I have to and it feels, and then I spend another 3 hours making a new thumbnail that if I had made it immediately in Photoshop and knew what I was doing, it would take me 10 minutes, but it takes me 3 hours because I'm creatively finding my way to what would be the perfect thumbnail. That said, I did want to say as well on this topic, which is that The Office, I don't know if you know this, Dael, but they stream the Lorecast while we're live. And then immediately I go upstairs. I'm like, were we good? Was it okay? And they're like, yeah, it was great when this
I always get a
came
call
up.
from my mum. Today was a good one.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's really sweet. It's interesting what Trent said as well, because I was thinking this whole time, I feel like we've been such down, because we are talking about mental health.
We have been a bit negative.
Yeah. But I'm trying to think, what are the positive angles on it? And I think Trent actually landed on one of the things I was thinking of, which is that there is something so empowering and agency providing in fixating on this stuff and doing your research and figuring out what YouTube likes, what's going to work, what's going to be great, and then deciding to do something that isn't optimal anyway.
Sure.
There's something so wonderful in that moment where you go, yeah, I think my channel probably would in many ways be better off if I called it Dael Kingsmill. But I'm attached to Monarch Factory. That's what I've been using. Maybe this video would be better than that video, but I want to make that video. Yeah. And there's delight in that.
I think also what you're saying about having people to talk to is probably my biggest bit of advice to people who are interested is definitely to try and find other people who are maybe of a similar style or a similar size to you. I don't know if you remember this, Dael, but when I very first started making videos in 2019, you commented on one of my very first ones to be like, this is good stuff. And I was like, and it just gave me such a little boost. And you've always been so lovely and generous over the years with giving me advice. I think I was talking with you last PAX of what do I do? And I'm very lucky. I think some of you might be in there, but there's a Discord for RPG tubers that I'm in, which is great because people throw in their thumbnails and be like, what's this thumbnail like? And people give their advice. And that kind of community, if you can find that community, is so helpful and lovely because like you say, it can feel very isolating sometimes if you're just, it's me and I'm alone in my room making my video. Yeah, so it's nice to connect with other people. It's probably one of my favorite parts about making a YouTube channel is I've managed to meet so many wonderful people. So
yeah, I will say coming to conventions is great because it's not always reflective of your comment section. I've never had someone come up at a convention and be like, I hated this video, because they wouldn't bother, I guess. But I've always had people come up and say I liked this one, or this one was really cool, or I like your vibe in general, or I'm a fan of the Lorecast. I blew someone's mind the other day. Sorry, first of all, this is just funny. Somebody came up and was like, I really love your channel. I think it's great. I also love, what's the other Dael? I think she does some great work. You two should collaborate on something, I think. And I was like, well, have you heard of the Eldritch Lorecast?
I mean, they were right. We should.
We should.
And we do.
Or just continue to debate each other on the merits of necromancy.
Can I tell you a secret?
Sure.
Okay. So, I do feel quite positive now, but 6 months ago, I was at a point where I was looking for other work, and it's like, this is something that I've worked very hard to sustain as a real job, a legitimate thing that gives me money that I can do fun things with, just make more things in videos. But I was so ready to give all that up because I was so sad, basically. And then I had a phone call with a friend who kind of only really knew me, but they were like, Trent, you took risks to get here. So if you're not taking risks now, you're kind of an idiot.
Sure.
So I feel like really taking risks is the safe thing to do now, because it's like you should all have confidence in yourselves that it's like, okay, well, I got me here. And I feel like we're all sort of scared about losing this because it's also important to us. Like, you know, miniatures, tabletop, wargaming, RPGs, YouTube, they're all what makes me me. So if I lose any part of that, I'm just like, what am I worth? So it's like, you know, I'll be scared. Everyone's scared, I think. So it's just like, I think we've got to not be scared.
Sure.
So if we all agree to not be scared.
Everyone put your hands in.
Yeah. I think that's great, honestly, because like we're at a place where people who are fans of the main channel that we have know that like Grim Hollow content is the majority of what I do, or like dark fantasy content. There's been a few times where we've strayed outside of that, where I did a couple of videos about the Ethereal Expanse, which is another Ghostfire setting, but it's almost the polar opposite. And we were really scared to do that because of the niching down, you know? And we would like to do more of that content on the main channel where we can, you know, talk about other settings or talk about other ways of playing D&D that isn't necessarily grim and dark all the time, though that will always be my home. But, you know, there is a fear in that. And you're right, of losing that, of backsliding, of not growing the channel anymore. And you've just inspired me to be like, screw it, I'm going to make whatever I want to make, because, you know, you're right. It would be silly not to take risks is like the riskier thing to do because of that glass ceiling of getting sort of niched in. I do have another question that I'm going to ask you all, but I don't want to hog the question asking. I don't know if people are going to have questions, so if you do, no pressure if nobody wants to. But we have microphones on either end. If you want to jump over to either of those to ask a question, and I'll call out to you if you're standing on one. Go now. While you're moving over there, I'm quickly going to ask, Trent, what's something you really love about, like that's really rewarding to you about being a YouTuber?
Yeah, I think it's like watching a community develop and grow, especially doing niche stuff. It encourages other people to do niche stuff, and then suddenly you're all learning from each other and encouraging each other. So it's the community building for me.
Luna, what about you?
Yeah, I think similar, although for me, I guess it's about connecting with other people that love the thing that I love, since I do make fandom content. I think fandoms can be very nebulous and sometimes not great, but I think a lot of people, especially here, will find a real home in a fandom where they really can connect with people. And so, yeah, I really enjoy having that connection in my designated comment time. But yeah, I really love that.
Dave?
Pretty much everything aside from the stresses we've talked about is the best thing. Like, I think we've laid a groundwork for a bunch of negative stuff, but like, I think that's the stuff maybe people don't know, and people know the cool stuff about being a content creator. Like walking into rooms and people literally smiling at you and wanting to say hello, or getting to come to panels and do this sort of thing, getting to go overseas if you're lucky enough to do that sort of thing, meeting industry people that like work on cool stuff, getting to collab with people, getting to make amazing things, and getting to inspire other people to do that. And when you see the things that people share and create, and it just inspires you. Even the stories, like I've had stories, we've had fan mail that has like impacted me on an incredibly deep level, because you never thought that you would be that important or make an impact on someone in a way that like really matters. So yeah, I'm getting emotional because I'm thinking of the incredibly emotional things people have told me. So I'll pass it on. You make an impact and it matters, and just helping people through stuff that maybe you've gone through is crazy. We're so lucky.
Yeah, no, mine's similar. I love that connection with people, and there are people who I know have been following my stuff and engaging with it for the entire duration that I've been on YouTube. And I recognize icons and profile pictures and usernames, and I have in jokes with people that it's just, it doesn't have to be big to be something. Does that make sense? Like, I've always loved being able to be that sort of fun little safe space when you need a distraction, or you just need something nice. And I like being able to do that. And I like meeting people who say, hey, I liked that one video you did.
I do love having, you just briefly mentioned it there, but like in jokes with the Lorecast crowd in particular, and like ones that come back from ages earlier, like bats equals fingers or bats equals wings. I don't even remember how that joke started, but it just like came back.
We don't need to. We don't need to.
Exactly. All right, we'll start over on my left and we'll go back and forth.
Thank you so much for talking about this and your vulnerability and candor. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was wondering, have any of you guys implemented YouTube Shorts into your strategy? And what has the impact of the existence of Shorts kind of been on your mental health?
YouTube Shorts makes me feel old, like quite legitimately. I don't actually know what like the specific years are of the generations, but I think I'm kind of like a mid-crowd millennial. And when I was being, I have a background in film studies and film creation and theatre and creative writing, all of those things. But I was trained in a way that was very for traditional media. And so I have things like, I don't know if people know what this is, but the millennial pause, which is like when you start filming a video, you pause to wait to see that it's recording and then you start talking. And so the way that I present my videos is very kind of like news presenter-y in a way. It's very like, this is what you should do, da-da-da-da-da, ba-ba-da-ba-da-da. But I feel like I don't have the skill set for shorts. We've been more successful on our channel with them recently, but it's mainly just been like cutting interesting snippets out of our long form videos and using those instead.
Right, I was going to say that as well, because short form content is such a different beast.
Yeah, it feels like a totally different genre to me.
Yeah, and I
it
have
is.
so much admiration for people who just naturally are like, oh yes, here's a snippy little 30-second thing that's going to be really cool. I just can't do that. But I've found a similar place where I've found my peace with shorts in cutting just, hey, here's my favorite funny thing that happened in the video. Let me just share that little bit. Maybe people won't watch the whole video, but they'll watch that little bit. That's good. I feel good that joke got out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you actually seen any like significant follow through or impact from them?
Not for me.
So I'm quite interested in this. I personally think shorts are kind of a waste of time for long form content creators. I think YouTube really wants to push them, but I think it's two completely different things. And you can build an amazing shorts channel, you can build an amazing long form channel. But having talked to some pretty significantly sized YouTubers that are very successful who make shorts, I was like, so like, what's the end game of this? Like, should we get into it? And they're like, subscriber number go up. They don't actually watch the long form content and they make no money. So it's just fun to make if you can make them. But really the actual flow through is very tiny, like because you can see it will show you like what percentage of people have gone on to like watch your long form.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think if anything, it's trying to grab people who watch half of your videos and you're trying to tell them, this one's good, I promise. Follow through, and I've linked the video right here. Yeah.
We jump across to my right. I have a podium in my way, so I can't see you, but...
That's okay. We have a lot of like studies and stuff being done now about how like the polarization of social media and like, people getting stuck in very specific and narrow places without any sort of disruption to certain viewpoints that they may have been thrown into. And just the internet in general. How do you deal with concerns around like privacy and boundaries, particularly when your content ends up like outside of your communities?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like I've been, as Dael was saying earlier, I've been very lucky that my community has, I think I've been very apparent about my values in my other social media. And so I've sort of built a community that shares those values so that when occasionally, it's not super often for me, but occasionally when a video will go outside of my subscriber base and maybe I'll start getting people who do not share the same values, that the community does kind of handle that a little bit for me sometimes. But that certainly can be, it can be a bit stressful. I think most people you can see when it hits outside of your subscriber base. And I don't know, I see a bit of a change there, but I guess I'm just, I've worked hard to curate my community to be somewhere that I would want to be. Yeah.
I actually think that's a really good point is anytime that one of my videos or a video I've made for another channel has broken containment is what I like to say. So, oh no.
reference.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta kind of, you vibe it. It really feels like the tone shifts in particularly engagement, like the comments. But I certainly, in my experience, have put a lot of trust in my community to be able to kind of confront that when necessary, or not feed it when that is necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a lot of community curation is valuable because we can be kind of trained to think, oh, any engagement is good engagement. So it can be really hard in early days to kind of nip certain things in the bud, but it's really valuable in the long run because you end up with this community that can look at, these interlopers from outside who maybe often it's fine. Again, don't want to frighten you, but when you get people who are coming in and bringing maybe more of a negative vibe than you're looking for, certainly in my case, I sort of trust my community to back that because it feels difficult for me to kind of confront each of those people or comments individually, but the sort of the people who are there already curate the vibe for you because you've done that work early on.
I apologize because we're running out of time. I think we've probably got time for one more before the panelists, the PAX people justifiably start kicking us out. So we'll jump over here to the left.
So I think Dael just mentioned something, part of the answer to the question I was about to ask. But you mentioned comments before and how you interact with them. What would you sort of say to your audience directly, or what would you change about the way that they interact with those comments and the way they interact with the videos to assist you in your mental health journey?
My main one, and it's not often that it comes up, but I think there is a legacy if you've been on the internet for long enough. There is that age-old wisdom of don't feed the trolls. But I think we've reached a point on the internet of saturation where it's no longer given that something is trolling. And it's no longer given that the best course of action is to remain silent and ignore someone. And so there have been times where I've had, particularly difficult people, coming in and making some fairly horrible comments. And if it's something that's really nasty, I can just zap it. But there are things where you start balancing on a borderline in things that people might say that could it be complimentary, could it not be complimentary, those sorts of things. And it becomes sometimes dangerous for me to engage because if it is a troll, they've got access now. They're just going to grab that. They're going to not let that bone go. But if community members jump in and say, hey, that's not cool, keep it simple, just, hey, don't talk like that, get out, that makes a huge difference. And so that's probably my answer.
Yeah, on a platform like YouTube, like an open forum of comments, it's kind of channel size depending as well. Like on a channel that has a significant enough number of comments on it, I mean, even when we're talking like 50 plus comments, any interaction is basically going to boost that. So like getting into a fight with someone is just going to mean that when people open that video, it's up the top. So like it's kind of different when you're moderating a community in a closed space like Discord, because you can kind of community members can like gauge out what's the genuine intent behind this actor? Because sometimes it's like a 13-year-old who just says something slightly on the edge, and then like as soon as they're corrected by someone, they're actually like, oh, whatever, or who knows what they are in a big public Discord. But like the point is more that if the community just set the standards and follow the standards you've set, that can be helpful. But and then moderators can delete things. You can delete things. But on YouTube comments, just don't interact with them. Just let them fall to the bottom, and no one. And just what they want is someone to get angry. So.
Something I would say is probably remember that a real person reads the comments. I think sometimes even people who are like enjoy my content or what have you, well, sometimes I feel like maybe this is from a TikTok thing, because I feel like discussion in TikTok comments feels like it's supposed to be separate from the creator who made the video, but there are actual real people reading those comments, and especially when you're an independent, it's just me. I don't have anyone else. So I suppose that would be my general rule for myself, is that no matter what I put on the internet, a real person is going to read it and have a feeling about it. So that's kind of, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I realize like I come with like a lot of privilege when I think about my comment section, and it's all very easy breezy. And like my biggest concerns are, what people say about my partner or my friends and stuff. And I have every sort of appearance keyword blocked, and I just moderate everything. But, I can't really speak. Honestly, it's,
Oh, actually, that's a great mental health tip to chuck in there at the end as well, is to say, don't be afraid to block people or block words. You're going to feel bad about it sometimes, but that's wrong. Don't feel bad about it. Just block them. Just block them.
Do you know what word I've got blocked, which might surprise people, is forehead. The amount of comments I get on the size of my forehead. I got a big forehead. What do you want me to do about it? It's insane. I don't know what it is, but yes, that's one of them that I have blocked on my block list. Forehead.
I think for myself, kind of similar to what Luna said, honestly, is remember that like real people read the comments, and I'm always presenting how I run my D&D games kind of in an authoritative way because that's, I'm trying to give people advice. But the intention is always, this is how I like to run my game, and the way you like to run your game, if it's different, is absolutely cool too, and that's absolutely valid. I think some people who come in who want to engage in good faith, but just their attitude is very like, your ideas are dumb, and this is how you should really do this. You're a bad GM because you did it this way, but, or whatever. And I think share your ideas. I want people to share ideas in the comment section, but just be nice about it.
Yeah.
Respond with extreme positivity. Because it's funny. I've done that occasionally. If someone says like you're dumb and you have bad ideas, you just be like, well, I can't wait. Like, I'm really excited to watch your YouTube video. Like, link it to me as soon as you've finished it. I can't wait to see your take on this. And then watch them never do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we wouldn't be YouTubers if we didn't take the opportunity. If folks, know some of us but don't know the others, starting up the other end, Dael, where can folks find you?
Yo, I'm Dael Kingsmill. You can find me all over the internet if you Google Dael Kingsmill. I've done a bad job of consolidating my brand across platforms, but I am on YouTube at Monarch Factory. But again, you could Google Dael Kingsmill and I'll come up.
Yeah, if you want to watch Aussies build Warhammer or play role-playing games, Tabletop Time. Go check it out. Tabletop Time Roleplay.
I'm at Luboffen on most things, mainly YouTube and Twitch, and sometimes Twitter.
Miscast anywhere. Probably, I don't know. I don't remember my handles, but if you just Google it, it'll be there. And you get what you get, basically. It could be anything.
It's always positive.
Ah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And you can find me on Ghostfire Gaming is the name of the YouTube channel, or Ghostfire Podcasts, where we have the Eldritch Lorecast, which is every week. It's also on any good podcatcher that you might be listening to podcasts in. Check it out. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to stick around and ask questions, that's totally cool. But for PAX folks, we'll probably move outside the room first so that they can kind of do what they need to do. But otherwise, thank you very, very much for sticking with us until 9:30.
Seven. It's a 7. It's a 7.
Well, there you go. You predicted it correctly.
It's 7.
Okay, all right.